everyone, it's a left-handed lady coming to today with our March plan with me. I took a couple weeks off and I am happy and ready to get back to drawing. So let's get started. Month's animal is going to be a hedgehog, and I've planned out our color scheme for this month, and I will link all of the colors in the description below. But let's go ahead and get started. We're going to use this brownish watercolor brush pen, and it has actual brush bristles, which makes it very natural looking marks, I guess, which makes it very easy, and it makes it very easy to create the fur or anything on an animal. You saw me use this technique last month. But just going very lightly and sporadically, building up those little spines. Now I'm taking a water pen that just has water in it and a brush, and I'm taking my dual brush Tombow brown and taking that pigment and filling in all of the white space with this water brush pen. Now, using a water brush pen on top of the already watercolor brush pen that I used just makes it blur out those edges so nicely, and it looks so perfect in the way. I love the way that this works, and you'll see that I'll be using this watercolor brush technique throughout the whole month. And I'm using that brown with the watercolor because it's just a little bit diluted, and making his head just that solid Tombow brown color with the water diluting it, and of course blending it out. And two little dots at the bottom for his feet. And now we are going to move into our flowers. And I did something kind of like a buttercup tulip look this month, but we are going to use oranges, yellows, and greens as our accent colors. So I'm taking that yellow brush pen and I'm laying down towards the base of the flower, the most of the color concentrated that way, and then using my watercolor pen to blend it upwards and make the inside of the flower more of that pastel yellow. As you can tell, I'm doing it here as well. Just really blend it out and then pull that yellow up into the outside part of that flower. It's very important, especially if you're using the Scribbles That Matter paper, that you work quickly when you're working with water and watercolors, because this paper does tend to absorb it very quickly. So, like you can tell, that top flower didn't blend as well as that last flower I just did, just because I waited a little bit too long on that one. So just got to be quick and work with one color at a time. As you can see, I'm jumping back and forth. I'm not switching colors every time. I did all the yellow, and now I'm doing all of this peachy brown. Now I'm going to take my green Tombow that I've been using, that I'm going to use for my flowers leaves, and I'm going to mix that in with my watercolor brush pen just to change up the color of that yellow just tiny bit and add some variation in the flowers. So add a little bit of green to that, and it just made it a little bit more olivey toned. Honestly, on camera it's not even showing up, but it did make it almost a completely different color in real life. And I'm doing that with this unopened bud as well. Now we're going to go in with our two different types of green Tombows and fill in our leaves and stems. I'll be using both sides of the Tombow brush pens for the leaves and stems. So the leaves will be using this big dual, the big brush tip, and the stems will be using the felt tip pen on the other end. Now I'm doing this almost neon-y green that I mixed with the yellow On the brown flowers, to add some contrast, make sure that I'm not going back in with that same color on the same flower that I used it as an accent. And then I'm taking my slightly more olivey toned green and going in on the yellow flowers. Just to break it up a little bit. I didn't want everything to have the same color green as its stems and leaves. I also love the way this bluish olive tone brings out the browns more on this page. I think it's really important that you plan out your color scheme before you even start drawing, because your color scheme really affects the flow of how your illustration is going to go. You may notice that I'm changing my position of my hands a lot in this video, and part of the reason why I didn't have a video last week or the week before, I have carpal tunnel in my left hand, and it has just been flaring up like crazy. So you'll see I'm adjusting my hand at certain points, and that's really not an artistic choice. It is just a pain choice. Now I'm going to go in with that neon green again in the felt tip side and fill in the word March. Just simple cursive at the bottom below the hedgehog. And I'm going to take that dark green as well and do the 2020 with the felt tip pen. Now there I'm making sure everything is dry. That's very important before you put this rubber eraser on the paper, because it will just rip your paper to shreds if it is not dry. As well as a pen over top will not look good if it's not dry. So I'm going to take my Sharpie fine liner and just go through, and I'm going to add in the details on the hedgehog, his ear, his eyes, his nose, framing in his face. As well as very, very lightly tapping that pen to the edge of the paper and just making very light little detailed strokes to represent the hair and the way that it is spiking. This is almost the same technique that I used on the birds with the light feathering, but a little bit less structured. Now this is something that I wish I hadn't done. I went back in and filled in the little buds with this green color, and after doing it I hated the way it looked. If I had gone in with the brown, I feel like it would have been better. But that's up to you. You can choose how you do that. As you can tell, I'm tapping on the paper because I didn't really like that decision that I made. But I did it, so we're just going to roll with it. Now I'm taking my Sharpie fine liner and just outlining everything, giving those petals a little bit of detail and all the leaves a little bit of detail. Using different pressures in your hand is exactly how I can use one pen and get 3 different looks out of it. Whenever I'm making the stem and the leaves and the petals, I use about the same amount of pressure I would use writing, like writing a letter. But whenever I go in to do the swirl shading on the inside of the flower, or even those little light lines that give it texture, I'm barely using any pressure. I'm not even using the weight of my hand, more like just the weight of the pen, if that makes sense. which causes more sporadic and less bold lines, which is exactly what I want when I'm adding detail and texture to things. Now, as I'm doing this one, you can tell that I have a very uneven leaf in there, and I really like to add those kind of flowers in to my drawings because it shows that not every flower is the same. I tend to go with a lot of the 3 petals in the front, 3 petals in the back kind of thing, and it's just subconscious the way I draw things. So whenever I catch it, I try to add in things that are just not quite symmetrical, so it looks a lot more natural. As well as adding a little bit of curve to the top of those petals just makes them look more realistic. Now we're going to take those 2 greens and we're just going to go along the tracker side of that page. We're going to take it and go every other one with these colors. Oh, that's just me counting out how many I needed to make sure I didn't go over. Now, I do recommend take your time while you're doing this. I was doing so good. I got all the way to the end and I messed up. So take your time. Don't get ahead of yourself. And it should look great. And there goes the mess up. I think it's funny, sometimes I realize how much I express myself with my hands when I'm upset, because I could just tell that in the video that I was upset about that. I like the way that them not all meeting at the same mark looks. I like that free-handed look, but you could form a box like we did last week and make it more form-fitted. Now I just took that brown, reddish, peach color and put a little bit on the page and then watercolored it out to make it look really faded. And once that's dry, I will use the black Tombow felt tip pen and be writing tracker at the top. I'm also going to fill in and write all of the dates down the side and do my lines to divide each section of the day. And now that I'm watching the video, I realize that I finished this page without actually finishing it. Normally I would put the things that I'm tracking up on the top above each column, and I just skipped that. So I guess I will personally have to go back in and redo that. It also looks like I'm going to have to be purchasing a new Sharpie pen because this one is just fading out. I use it way too much. And that's our monthly cover page. So now we're going to step right into our month spread. Now we're going to speed kind of through this because it's basically the same as last month's. We're going with a 6x6 square grid, and I am doing it Monday through Sunday this time. Props to me, I did not mess it up. Just taking that felt tip bold pen from Tombow in black and making all those lines really thick and prominent. And now that I've got all those lines put in, I am going to take the same methods that I used on the cover page and paint the hedgehog and the flowers. So I'm just looking back at my reference and getting all of my supplies out. I believe that I did these on 2 separate days, so that's probably why it's not as fluid. And that's also why I didn't add any green to these flowers, which I kind of wish I had, because that blossom needed to be a different color in my head. But it still looks okay. Doing the same thing using that brown Tombow pen and my watercolor pen to blend everything out and to fill in the head of the hedgehog. Now, normally the ends of these brushes are clear or white. I've used mine so long and with so many dark pigments that it is stained now. So if that makes you wonder why it's blue-black looking. I'm just going in with the Tombow pens in green again and making those stems and leaves. And now I'm going to take all of the colors that we've used in this scheme. Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. I'm going to take that Sharpie fine liner and just line out everything that we did in the first time. Outlining, adding texture to the hedgehog, and doing the petals and the leaves and the stems on the flowers. And now I'm going to take all the colors from our palette this month and go through and mark out the days of the week. And with my Tombow dual brush tip, the felt pen, I'm going to write the days of the week. And going in with our colors again, making the dots on the dates and filling those in with a Sharpie fine liner for the actual date. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of all of our planning for this month. I kept it really simple, easy.